There's a difference between having access to culture and knowing how to move through it. Stacey Langham understands this intuitively. As head of corporate and luxury partnerships at the Royal Academy of Arts, she builds relationships that bring creative and commercial worlds into dialogue on terms that reflect long-term thinking. She's forged collaborations with houses like Claridge's, Liberty and Creed that go far beyond logos and sponsorship deals. Her work is about aligning cultural capital with brand ambition in ways that feel authentic, creative and lasting. And while the RA is known for its exhibitions, it's also home to the UK's only tuition-free postgraduate art programme, funded entirely through philanthropy and partnership, a clear reflection of the Academy's values and its quiet but firm defence of creative education. Stacey, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Delighted to be here.
Stacey, we were just having a chat and we met in New York, didn't we, on a UK trade mission with Walpole?
Yeah.
Where you accused me of walking a little bit too quickly.
You did. We walked for about 20 minutes up to an event at JP Morgan and I felt like I'd done an aerobics class.
Well, I've just been in a silent retreat and I have to go on remedial silent retreats to slow my pace down, which I worry might be a reflection of my train of thought. And I'm feeling a lot calmer. And if you walked with me right now, it would be a very palatable pace. Stacey, it's great to have you. You sort of began your career in publishing, didn't you? And then you moved into the cultural sector. The cultural sector is really interesting. You know, there are complexities to it. You know, how it's funded is it's a difficult sector to navigate. Let's put it that way. But before we get to that, can you walk us through your personal journey and what led you to the RA?
Yeah, sure. So prior to joining the Royal Academy back in 2018, most of my career, in fact, the majority of my career was in magazine publishing. So that was working BBC magazines on their food publications, Marks and Spencer magazine, but it was actually working on the glossy women's titles. So Elle, Red, New Woman, Elle Decoration, that actually gave me the real understanding about thinking strategically, collaborating creatively, and how working together, particularly with luxury brands, you can almost sort of tell this brand story in a very elegant way. After that, I moved on to a magazine called Art Review, sister title Art Review Asia, so contemporary art magazine. I learned a huge amount about the art world there. So not just about the contemporary art market in London, but how that operates globally, the network of art fairs and so forth, galleries, auction houses, but also luxury brands as well, and kind of how there's a bit of an ecosystem there that all works very cohesively together. It was after that that I then moved into the cultural sector and moved into the Royal Academy. You know, and for me, actually, it was a really fortuitous moment. I'd been a member of the Academy for about 15 years beforehand. You know, London has incredible art institutions, particularly visual arts, but the Royal Academy was the one that I had just always gone to. So for me, it felt almost like, sounds a bit twee, but a bit like coming home in a way. But it was also, you know, the Royal Academy is a registered charity. So that gave me real understanding into not-for-profit sectors. And that really allowed me to broaden my perspective, you know, on how art, commerce, philanthropy really all do intersect together. And that then gave me the opportunity to bring those work, you know, the luxury brands, the world of art together in a cohesive way.
When you remember, how often did you go roughly?
To the Academy?
Yeah.
Quite a lot. I mean, I really enjoyed going.
Once a month? Once a quarter?
Probably, I'd say the main gallery exhibitions I would have gone to. I mean, there were some spectacular ones, you know, kind of Ai Weiwei.
Any personal favourites?
I think the Ai Weiwei one was incredible. That was fantastic. But I also remember seeing Sensations, 1997.
Yeah.
I mean, that was an extraordinary exhibition. And that really, I think, did a huge amount. You know, it was the RA sort of shining a light on those artists, but actually what it was also doing was opening up the art world, the doors of the Academy for artists to really showcase the work of these artists.
Can you just tell us a bit about the Royal Academy?
So the Royal Academy is an incredibly unique institution. I don't think there's anywhere else like it. It was founded in 1768, so over 250 years ago, by a group of artists and architects. Royal in the title because it was under the patronage of George III, but it was as a way to, and this is from our instrument of foundation, to promote the creation, enjoyment and appreciation of the visual arts through exhibitions, education and debate. Now that was written in 1768, but those principles still really guide us very much to this day. We put on world-class exhibitions. We have a full public programme where people can come to talks, to workshops, to drawing classes. But the education part is probably the part that we're not so well known about. So a few months after the Academy was founded, early 1769, the Royal Academy Schools was founded. Now, they still exist today on site at the Royal Academy. They are Britain's oldest art school. We offer a 3-year postgraduate and contemporary art practice. I think the most critical part of this is we don't charge fees to the students. So the students who are with us are there because of, they've earned that place. It's a very meritocratic process.
Yeah.
We'll probably come back on touch on the schools a bit later. But there are a couple other things that are incredibly unique as well. We're governed by Royal Academicians. So that very first group of artists and architects, known as Royal Academicians, they very much govern everything that we do. And they are artists such as Tracy Emin, David Hockney, Sir Grayson Perry, Sonia Bryce, Farshid Musavi, David Chipperfield. I mean, the list goes on and on. They're elected by their peers and they remain Royal Academicians for life. We also have the summer exhibition. So that has been running every year since 1769.
That's wild.
It's incredible. It's run through the World Wars. It ran through COVID, slightly, I think it was sort of the autumn winter show.
If you've made it through the World Wars, you can't give up in COVID, can you?
Yeah. It was set up actually by those original Royal Academicians as a way for them to display their art for sale to fund the Royal Academy schools. And that's still very much the premise today. It's the world's largest open submission exhibition. So members of the public can send in their work and it's an opportunity for them to have, members of the public to have works sitting alongside Royal Academicians on the walls of the Royal Academy. The majority of the works are for sale and still to this day that goes to supporting the work of the Royal Academy schools and the RA's wider charitable aims. We are a fiercely independent organisation, so we receive no public funding. It was how we were set up.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't realise that.
Yeah. So that's,
no like Arts Council or anything like that?
Absolutely not. So in a way, it gives us, it kind of gives us...
strategic autonomy.
Exactly. We can shine a light on things that we believe are important or that our members, our friends, will want to know about and learn about and understand more.
What's the exhibition that you're most excited about?
We've got a fantastic exhibition on at the moment, Kerry James Marshall, The Histories. It's had phenomenal reviews across the board, and they are extraordinary works of art. So Kerry himself, he's he's probably America's most important artist, much more well known in America. But his works are all about representation of Black figures in art. And they are big, large-scale works, 70 in the exhibition. And actually, he talks about standing in front of them. And every time you look at the work of art, you will see different things in there. They're so multi-layered, so multifaceted. There's so much in there. So that's really exciting. We've got a couple of really good exhibitions coming up next year. So we've got Painting the French Riviera next autumn.
Okay.
So, that will be incredible. The works going into that are astonishing. So that's looking at artworks from sort of the 1860s, Cézanne, Monet, moving into sort of mid-1950s, Picasso, Klein. It's an incredible array of artists. We've also got Peggy Guggenheim in London next year. Peggy Guggenheim had a gallery on Cork Street from 1938 to 1939. So it was a short-lived gallery, but she achieved a huge amount actually during that time. So it's going to be looking at some of the exhibitions that she put on during that time. I mean, she was also a real, she was a female trailblazer. She really liked to, she was promoting female artists, but also she used to put on exhibitions by school students. So Lucian Freud, one of his, the first work that he had exhibited was in one of her school shows in her gallery. So she was, ahead of her time, really.
Can you talk to us a bit about Art in Mayfair?
Yeah, sure. So Art in Mayfair, that's a project that we set up in 2018 to celebrate our 250th anniversary, working together with the Bond Street Association, the new West End company. And that was very much to celebrate the summer exhibition. So it's run now for 8 years. You have Royal Academicians who design flags that run the length of Bond Street. Also at the same time, Bond Street sort of transfer the brands, transform into some sort of immersive art experience. So they offer, some of them have offered over the years, masterclasses, workshops, opportunities to see their art collections in store. So it almost becomes a real sort of talking point for that kind of 6 weeks when the project is running. And the idea is very much that, art from the Academy is spilling out onto the streets of Mayfair. We're very close to Bond Street, and it's an amazingly vibrant, one of the best kind of shopping districts in the world. But also it's about those visitors coming to Bond Street and kind of having that connection with the art, with the project, and wanting to know what's going on in the Academy. So this year we actually had flags designed by Anselm Kiefer. He's an honorary Royal Academician. He has an exhibition at the Academy, finishes shortly, but that sort of aligned really nicely. And actually last year, we had one of the graduating students, Lizzie Munn, design the flags in place of a Royal Academician. And that was to highlight and celebrate the restoration project of the Royal Academy schools, which finished last year.
So the RA, so it's been going for 250 years, roughly.
Absolutely.
And, what are the challenges personally that you face when it comes to bringing a vision for the future to an organisation that carries so much history and legacy?
I think, look, the Royal Academy, almost was founded a similar time to sort of luxury brands as we know them today, that kind of late 1780s.
Yeah.
And I think the things that resonated or were really important for luxury brands at that time are still really relevant today. So it's about the craftsmanship. It's about the quality of the product. It's about the artistry. It's about heritage as and where relevant. But it's also that, a product of excellence. And those elements are still very much valid today. It's interesting, actually. You look at kind of haute couture, for example. So, around the mid-1800s, people started looking at creating almost these bespoke pieces of fashion. But actually, they were sort of the first unique artworks that, kind of saw their way into the public eye. And you think about, somebody like Salvador Dali, over 90 years ago, he designed the iconic lobster dress for the Elsa Schiaparelli collection. I think it was 1937. That was worn by Wallis Simpson. She appeared in Vogue in it, very much like the sort of social media of her day. There's a quote, she talks about, the power of innovation and the impact that art and fashion can have. And that dress now lives in the Philadelphia Museum of Art. These relationships have been going on.
Yeah, and they've been intertwined. And you forget that when you look back at history.
They really are. You think about, somebody like Vivienne Westwood. She was hugely influenced by artists Velázquez, Kahlo. She, even as recently as 2020, she designed a corset dress which was inspired by Matisse cutouts from the 1940s.
Really?
You've got, coming more into the modern day, you've got Damien Hirst, who collaborated with Alexander McQueen back in 2012. Jeff Koons, collaborating with Louis Vuitton, Yaya Kusama and Louis Vuitton, kind of that global takeover, which was extraordinary actually, a couple of years ago. So there's something very intrinsically linked between particularly fashion actually, designers and art. And I think often those fashion designers have been through some sort of artistic, creative education process. Yeah. They know the value of how important art is. So in using it in terms of pulling collaborations together, pulling products together, creating something that's covetable, desirable, people talk about, people understand, and that, kind of captures the brand DNA as well.
It's interesting because obviously the Royal Academy also represents architects. And I feel that the coming together of fashion and architecture has also, it's sort of having a bit of a moment. There are more branded residences than ever before. There are fashion designers delivering, incredible interior concepts. The high street is becoming more theatrical, and unexpected, names from one world are being brought into other worlds, and I find it quite interesting.
I think it really is. Architecture's hugely important for us as well. A quarter of our Royal Academicians are architects. The other 75% artistic practices. But you're absolutely right. You can see this permeating through into, the very essence of the brand or the residence or wherever that might be. It's right from the beginning of the process, and it's working through, and it's contributing to the story, how that building came into being, what was so important about the architecture that resonates. There's the Google building in King's Cross, which designed by Thomas Heatherwick. Again, a really interesting kind of partnership, bringing those two together.
He's incredible. How do you think about innovation? Because it feels almost like in the context of a 250-year-old institution, how do you balance preserving the past but looking to the future?
I think we try. We really do. Through partnerships, I think that's something that we really do look at and think about. I think if we go back to the Royal Academy schools, because they are an area that particularly resonates with the brands that we work with. And I think there's a couple of reasons for that. First of all, Britain's oldest art school, we offer a free education for 3 years. So to 17 emerging artists in each of those years. It's that postgrad in contemporary art practice. But what we want to make sure they've earned their place through their own merit. And we really do choose the students that we believe will benefit the most from what we can offer. But we want to make sure that whilst they're with us, they get to really have that time in their studios, really dedicated to the practice of whatever it is that they're thinking about. So they have their own studios with us on site, right? Which is also hugely important. So
you have like 17 studios.
We have 17, studio spaces for those students, and it's really interesting actually as well. They're kind of all connected together. Yeah, they were built. We moved into Burlington House, which is where we are now, in 1868. The schools were built by Sidney Smirke, Royal Academician, and actually they've pretty much, they've stayed as they were since 1868. We had a renovation refurbishment project which finished back in 2024, but otherwise they really are as they were. And those studio spaces are laid out in that way to allow for collaboration, for discussion, for critical thinking about other people's practice.
And it's mixed media.
It's all different, absolutely. There's an incredible set of workshops dedicated to the students. Again, these were recently refurbished, but, on offer there's a dark room, there's a kiln, there's welding, 3D printing. I mean, everything you can think of.
Yeah.
And the idea with the students is that they're with us for those 3 years. They may come to us as an amazing fine artist.
Yeah.
But actually they could leave us as an astonishing sculptor.
Yeah, that's interesting.
It gives them, we want them to try new practices that they would not ordinarily have had the time or space to be able to do so.
What's the age group?
So the average age, so it's a postgraduate, so it's kind of late 20s is usually the average age. But we've had students a couple of years ago, sort of late 40s.
Yeah,
50,
I was interested because I wondered how many people kind of returned to their calling after doing what they thought was expected of them, or maybe just not knowing what was available to them, perhaps to hone their craft.
I think there's that as well. But for us, it's really important because it's about supporting the next generation of emerging artists.
What is so when you work with luxury brands to collaborate, people like Claridge's, Liberty, Creed, some collaborations that are notable ones, certainly that sort of I relate to. How do you go about developing the partnerships? How do you ensure that they feel authentic?
So authentic, I find authentic quite a tricky word. I think it's a bit of a catch-all. Interestingly, and this is slightly random off topic, but authentic was the Merriam-Webster word for 2023. So, it's the most used word of 2023. I think the word that kind of better talks about what we're looking to do is resonate. And I think it has to resonate. It has to have that personal, it's back to that personal, emotional, intellectual connection with the audiences. It has to almost make sense where you sort of go, that brand and the Royal Academy. Well, of course, that makes perfect sense. That works incredibly well. So I think it's about, at the heart of it, that resonance has to be there on both sides. Yeah. And then it's looking at what the brands want to achieve, what they want to shine a light on, which elements of the academy kind of resonate with that, and how do we bring that all together?
What do the collaborations actually look like? Can you just bring some of them to life?
So Claridge's and the Royal Academy, friends and neighbours, part of the community, for quite a long time now. Claridge's have been around since sort of 1850 something, and they're known as a home for art, for artists, for creatives. Yeah. They have an incredible art collection, which includes works by by quite a few of the Royal Academicians. But what they wanted to do was work together with the Academy to establish a new sort of prize as such, quite an innovative prize. So a few years ago, 2023 saw the inaugural Claridge's Royal Academy Schools Art Prize. So that is set up. It's a prize that goes to a winning student from the third year cohort. So it's chosen from their graduation show. That student then receives a production fund and support, and also has the opportunity to have a display, have an exhibition in the Peritan art space, which is part of the Claridge's building. So for a graduating student, that's an incredible opportunity to be able to show your work in a West End gallery and have the funding and also support and guidance to be able to do that is hugely important. And it's, those sort of partnerships that supporting that student in particular, or graduate in particular, but also showing how much they feel that emerging artists, supporting those artists on those journey is incredibly important.
Luxury brands sort of trade in aspiration and dream. Mm-hmm. What's the RA's aspiration and dream?
I guess it's so luxury, any luxury brand, you're selling more than an object. It's not just about the bag. It's not just about the pen. It's how that was created, and that gives you that sense of belonging. And I think what the RA offers is cultural capital as a way of belonging. We have the artistic excellence, creativity. We've talked about things like life drawing classes, exhibitions that shine a light on different artistic practices, and for patrons as well, there's kind of behind the scenes visits to artist studios, collection visits, but again, that's a shared passion, within that community. So I think it's very much about culturally what that community can offer in its different guises.
And how do you think collaborations between artists and brands shift perception?
I think it's something to do with when it moves from functional to almost symbolic. So you've got a brand collaborating with an artist. That product, that experience often goes beyond the functional purpose. So it goes beyond, the perfume, the clothing, the car, etc. And it almost becomes that symbol of culture, but also taste, desirability, cachet. You've got that cross-pollination of ideas. But what it's also doing, I think, is democratizing as well art. It's becoming available to more people in many ways. And it moves from being something, what this product is to what it represents.
When you imagine the RA's approach to partnerships in a decade, how do you see that? Do you think it's going to be more than it was before?
Look, we hugely value our partnerships. Yeah. We touched on before that sort of philanthropic role almost. Yeah. They're really important. But, and I'd like to see them grow. I'd like to see them develop. We have quite a few of the luxury brands now supporting scholarships and bursaries for the students. We'd really like to see that continue on a trajectory, opportunities to collaborate with the schools, but also across the wider academy. And actually, how can we pull all these elements together in a commercial way as well that makes sense? One of our supporters earlier in the year was Granado Perfumery. So we had Brazilian Modernism exhibition. They supported that exhibition, but what also did as well together, we created co-branded artwork, which was used as cover for some of their products, which then was on for sale in both the Royal Academy shop, but also in their stores in London. They created windows made from the artwork. This kind of joint branded, co-branded element was also on a full taxi campaign around London. So it's trying, it's thinking about how can we go beyond? How can we create more? How can we ask for, ask for more, but in a way that it's very much a sort of symbiotic relationship.
The value exchange is enormous, in my opinion, because as we mentioned before, the product is not the product. The product is a symbol of the journey to get to the product, and a reflection of culture and a reflection of craft and a symbol of skill honed, and to demonstrate that is fundamentally important to you as a luxury brand is. It's obviously very important.
Yeah. And I think, but a lot of brands, Granado, art was very much in their DNA.
Yeah.
And again, it's shining a light on that to the UK audiences. They're a brand that's incredible, very well known in their native, in Brazil, but not about that kind of art piece, certainly in the UK. And that was something that we kind of worked very much together on. What I would say is, with our partnerships, it really is a partnership. It's not about one side having more sort of power than the other. They work really well together because they are so well balanced.
Yeah, that's nice to hear. What do you think is the next great luxury in the arts?
I think we're onto this already, but probably time and attention.
Yeah.
Even more. Being able to visit an exhibition without a phone, just to really, to be there, be present, experience the art. Art really has the power to enrich our lives and to really, sometimes operate as a sort of soothing balm, against kind of the everyday life outside. So I think it's about having the time to really stop and pause, but also, that sort of attention on how it makes you feel.
Yeah.
What's important about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. It's a reason to slow down.
Very much so. I think it's using art to enrich lives.
Yeah.
And ultimately to potentially even change lives. Alexander McQueen used to talk about going to the V&A and being inspired by the artwork there. We've just actually finished working on a project. It launched last week with Liberty, London. It's their 150th anniversary. They launched a new fragrance, 1875, and the packaging for that, so the cap of the bottle, but also the packaging itself was designed by one of our students.
Really?
Who recently graduated, Esther Gamzu, and it was in response to the fragrance, the actual fragrance itself. We invited applications from across student group and the alumni. But actually what's really lovely about Esther's work, it's a beautiful, beautiful finished product. Her artwork, it's a sort of textile, almost interpretation of the Liberty building. So what I would say about Liberty London, collaborating with them together, they are a brand. They're very artisanal in their products. They're quite trendy, sort of edgy, but they really support new and emerging designers as well. And that's an area that kind of really resonates with us as well, and actually helps to drive those younger audiences from our perspective as well. It's, turning those products, into those really story-driven experiences and how that cuts across social media and those kind of cultural channels as well.
We ask all of our guests the same few outro questions. And the first question I have for you is what would you change about your industry?
I think it's about this perception that art isn't for everybody.
Yeah.
Art really is for everybody. We have an amazing array of institutions in London. That's visual arts, but also theatre. We have, music venues, all of these things. And they are really open to everybody. And people should, we really do want people to feel comfortable when they walk through the doors of the Royal Academy, to feel welcome and to know that they have a place there.
Have you changed how you think about exhibition design over the last 5 years?
Look, the last 5 years have been challenging.
Yeah.
Look, it brought COVID, it brought lots of, difficulties, actually being able to put on exhibitions because works were all in different places, etc., etc. But there have been some really incredible exhibitions over the past few years. Marina Abramovich, so she took over the main galleries in 2023, first performance artist to do so. And actually that exhibition brought with it, a younger generation of visitors. And that for us is really important. It's how do we engage with that younger generation and get them into the academy.
Can I ask you what most concerns you about the world we're leaving the next generation?
So I think it goes back to that creativity, the importance of that creativity. I worry about, where's the boredom? Where's the kind of time, moodling and just sort of being, and because I think that's when ideas come. I've got 2 young adult children, and their time is filled all the time, by what's on the phone, looking at where people are, looking at Snapchat, looking at all these different ways that their attention is being compromised. And actually, to have that time away from those things is incredibly rare now and very precious.
It's sad, isn't it?
It is, because I genuinely think that really leads onto, amazing ideas, trains of thought, different ways of processing things, different ways of analysing things. It's inherent to kind of, working life, actually.
Totally. I mean, I was always brought up on that mantra, but only boring people get bored, because there's so much time of that where you could get bored if that's how you thought, if that's how you framed it. I mean, I actually have one of these things called the brick, and I tap my phone on it and it bricks my phone, and you can't unbrick it unless you tap it physically on the object. And it's really worrying, actually, because I realise, because now when it's bricked, I know that I can't access any apps other than my camera and WhatsApp and my email. But and so I don't even reach for my phone. But the difference of not how often I don't reach for it, given how desperately addicted I am to it when it's not bricked. With these terrible excuses you tell yourself that you need to check your email, or so many things are so important. They're not important. They're not important at all. And often you do things because you don't want to forget to do them, really, because you're so overwhelmed with things you need to do. But actually, if you just carried a notebook, you'd be fine.
Yeah, completely. And actually, notebook, brilliant. That's for jotting down ideas. That's for kind of capturing these things, because where else can you do that?
Yeah, well, your phone, unfortunately.
Yeah, sadly.
If you had to give up your job tomorrow, what would you do?
Look, I'm really lucky. I really enjoy what I do.
That's what everyone on this podcast has said.
Do they? Yeah, okay. But if I did languages degree, so I'd love to go back and live in France. I'd love to learn more languages. Had a secret hearkening to be a doctor as well. So,
right.
But that would have needed some science A-levels.
So either a linguist or a heart surgeon.
Yeah, I'll take it.
What's the most exciting thing coming up for you in the next 5 years?
So next 5 years, I think for the Academy, there's a really strong exhibition programme coming in. We've obviously got the ones that we've announced, but there's also a lot of exhibitions currently in development as well.
Yeah.
So that will be really exciting. We have a new CEO on board, Simon Wallace, who's joined us from the Hepworth, Wakefield. So that will be, I think, give us opportunities to really look at the Academy as a whole and align all the different areas that we represent, and really shine a light on what we do best.
Great. And I think important, as a sort of end note as well, to just emphasize, there's a role for luxury brands in the arts, and aligning with organizations like the RA, is hugely beneficial. And I think it's a mutual value exchange. It's not just one way.
Yeah. We need that, we need that support. We need those luxury brands, almost, existing as, kind of patrons would have done in their days. We need those as kind of modern, luxury brands as modern day patrons. Yeah. Because without that support, we wouldn't be able to do what we do.
Stacey, thank you very much.
Thank you.